Chosen one, this message didn't find you by accident. God led you here on purpose. Maybe you've been questioning whether any of it mattered. Maybe you've been wondering if anyone saw the sacrifices, the silent tears, the moments you obeyed God when it cost you everything. Let this be your divine confirmation. Heaven saw it all. God saw what no one else acknowledged. He heard every prayer you whispered through tears. He counted every time you stayed loyal when it would have been easier to walk away. This message is more than encouragement. It's a spiritual announcement. God is proud of you and everything you've done in obedience, in love, in secret. It's about to be rewarded openly. Here are 7 chapters. Heaven wants you to understand right now. Before we dive deep, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because this message isn't just content, it's a divine confirmation for the chosen ones. And to every soul who's been showing love through super thanks, thank you deeply. May God bless you richly. Your support, your presence, and your obedience to stay connected do not go unnoticed. You are part of this divine unfolding, and heaven sees you too. If your spirit feels this frequency, type 77 in the comments right now. That number isn't random. It's a sacred signal, a prophetic echo that you're aligned, awakened, and ready to receive the open reward for everything you did in secret. The prayers, the sacrifices, the obedience, the silence. Not everyone will stay through this entire message. Only the truly chosen. And those who do will receive clarity, reassurance, and divine confirmation that God is proud of you. This word carries prophetic weight, and if your soul has been asking for a sign that your quiet labor was seen, this is it. This isn't something you listen to once and move on from. This is a living word, a holy reminder that heaven has kept record. Watch it again when your heart feels weary. Play it again when you need strength, because with every listen, another layer of divine affirmation will rise, and you'll remember, heaven saw what you did. Chapter 1. God saw you stand when you could have bent. Chosen one, let's start here, with the moments no one clapped for but heaven celebrated. The times you attempted to compromise, to bend just a little, to do what would have made things easier or faster. But something inside you said no. That something was the Holy Spirit. You could have chosen convenience over calling. You could have followed the crowd, watered down your truth, taken the popular route. But instead, you stood firm, even when it was lonely, even when it cost you dearly. God saw that. Not one act of obedience slipped past his eyes. Not one sacrifice went unnoticed in heaven's record. There were situations where you were offered shortcuts, the kind that looked shiny on the surface but would have required you to betray your own soul. You felt the pressure to fit in, to say yes, to just play the game. But instead, you kept your spirit clean, you kept your motives pure, you kept your identity rooted in who God called you to be, not what people expected you to become. That wasn't easy. There were nights you questioned yourself. Times you looked around and saw others prospering while you were still in the wilderness. But don't be fooled. Some of those people gained the world and lost themselves. You, however, chose the eternal path. You chose the slow route that builds substance, not just surface. And heaven took note. Angels watched you say no when your flesh wanted to say yes. God marked every moment where you walked away from what looked good because you knew it wasn't God. That's a different kind of strength. That's rare in a world that celebrates compromise and rewards performance. You chose character over comfort. You chose obedience over applause. You chose purpose over popularity. And now God is preparing something you can't even imagine. A reward that fits the quiet strength you displayed. The blessings coming your way aren't just compensation, they're confirmation. Confirmation that you were never crazy for standing alone. Confirmation that your moral courage was never wasted. You didn't bend to the world, so now heaven is bending toward you, chosen one. You weren't overlooked, you were being observed, you weren't forgotten, You were being formed. Every no you said to the wrong thing created space for the right thing. Every time you chose integrity over indulgence, you were building a legacy that heaven can breathe on. Get ready. What's coming to you isn't random. It's reward, not just for what you did, but for what you refused to do. And when it comes, you'll know exactly why it had to take this long. You didn't fold. And now God is about to unfold the fullness of His favor in your life. Chapter 2. God saw the tears no one else did. Chosen one, some of the deepest pain you ever experienced was never witnessed by another human being. You carried burdens in silence. You cried in places where no one could hear you. You smiled in rooms where your heart was breaking, and you loved people deeply while feeling completely unseen. You kept showing up when you had every reason to shut down. You poured into others when your own soul was running dry. You offered compassion when all you really needed was a shoulder to lean on. You prayed for people's healing while silently bleeding within. And somehow, through all of that, you kept going. You didn't collapse. You didn't give up. You didn't curse God or turn bitter. And heaven noticed. God saw every single tear. Not one drop was lost. The same God who counts the hairs on your head has counted every tear that fell from your eyes. Every sleepless night, every whispered, "God, I don't know how much more I can take." Every moment you tried to stay strong when everything inside of you was falling apart. It was recorded, remembered, and received like a sacred offering. Your pain was not wasted. It became the soil where God planted deep roots of faith, patience, compassion, and wisdom. What looked like suffering was actually sacred shaping. He used the broken places to build something beautiful within you. And though others couldn't see the transformation happening inside you, God was shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more spiritually powerful than you've ever been. There were moments you were surrounded by people, but still felt completely alone. You fought silent battles while others praised your strength. They didn't know you were leading and encouraging them while barely holding yourself together. You were exhausted but faithful, afraid but obedient, hurt but still hopeful. That kind of endurance doesn't come from human strength. It comes from the Spirit of God living inside you. You need to know this. The tears you cried didn't just vanish. They are seeds, seeds sown in the soil of suffering, and those seeds are about to bloom into joy, breakthrough, and blessing. God is turning every tear into a testimony, every moment of sorrow into a season of sweetness. Heaven is releasing restoration, not just emotionally, but spiritually, mentally, and materially. The weight you carried in silence is being lifted. The years you spent in survival are about to shift into abundance, not just because you asked, but because you endured, because you trusted Him when it made no sense to, because you praised Him while walking through the fire. There is honor coming to your name. There is peace returning to your heart. There is joy being restored to your soul. And it's not just a reward, it's a divine response. God is saying, "I saw it all, and now I'm answering." So let this be your confirmation. You were never overlooked. You were never forgotten. In fact, it was your hidden tears that made you heaven's priority. And now, what was done in secret will be rewarded openly. The same God who held you through the valley is now leading you into victory. You cried, but you never stopped. You wept, but you still worshipped. You broke, but you stayed in God's hands. And now He's about to build something with your story that will bless not only you, but generations. God saw the tears no one else did. And now all of heaven is moving on your behalf. Chapter 3. God saw your silence when you could have fought back. Chosen one, there were moments when your name was in rooms your feet had never entered. People twisted your intentions. They mocked your growth. They took your kindness for weakness and turned your silence into something to laugh at. They told one side of the story, theirs, and left you painted as the villain. You could have exposed the truth. You had the facts. You had the evidence. You had the receipts. But instead of clapping back, you stepped back. That choice, It wasn't easy, but it was holy. You didn't stay quiet because you didn't have a voice. You stayed quiet because you knew your voice was too valuable to waste on proving your innocence to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. That kind of restraint is not natural, it's spiritual. You chose to surrender your reputation to God. You gave him the case, the courtroom, the outcome, and when you did, heaven took over. God saw the moments when your name was being dragged while you were on your knees asking him to help you not become bitter. He saw you weep from the betrayal. He saw you bite your tongue when lies tried to break your character. You didn't retaliate. You didn't post about it. You didn't start a war. You let God fight the battle. And that, chosen one, is the kind of strength that shakes the spirit realm. The enemy wanted you to react, to blow up, to lash out and forfeit your favor. But you didn't. You stayed still. And in that stillness, God was moving, behind the scenes, deep in hearts, beyond what you could see. People mistook your silence for weakness, but God saw it as wisdom. They thought you were retreating, but you were just being repositioned. There are rewards being released to you right now because of the way you handled what was done to you. You could have gone low, but you went higher. You could have fought with words, but you chose worship instead, and heaven never forgets that kind of maturity. It's the kind of self-control that positions you for promotion. Now God is preparing something bigger than just an apology. He's preparing restoration. He's preparing elevation. And when it happens, it won't come with revenge. It will come with peace. It will come with joy. It will come with undeniable favor that even your enemies will have to acknowledge. This isn't just about being right. It's about being righteous. And you chose righteousness. You chose to protect your spirit more than your image. You trusted God to handle what you could have tried to fix on your own. And because of that, he's about to speak so loudly in your life that every lie ever spoken will be drowned out by the volume of your victory. Your silence wasn't empty, it was sacred, and now it's echoing through heaven like a trumpet. The time is coming when the same mouths that lied will have to watch God bless you openly, not as revenge, but as redemption. You stayed quiet, now God is speaking. You stayed pure, now God is promoting. You stayed faithful, now God is fulfilling. Chosen one, your silence was not weakness, it was worship. And heaven saw everything. Chapter 4. God saw how you loved, even when you weren't loved. Back, chosen one, there's a kind of love that can only come from heaven. The kind that continues even when it's not returned, even when it's rejected, even when it's taken for granted. And that's the kind of love you gave. You poured yourself out for people who never even said thank you. You extended grace to those who gave you silence. You offered loyalty to those who turned their backs the moment you needed them most. And still, you loved. You loved through the disappointment. You loved through the delays in their growth. You loved without needing validation, not because it was easy, but because the Spirit of God was living inside you. It wasn't weakness. It was warfare. Every time you chose love when hate would have been justified, you were waging war in the spirit realm. You were showing the enemy that your heart could not be poisoned, that no matter what was done to you, your character would not become a reflection of your pain. God saw how you stayed tender, even when the world expected you to harden. He saw how you gave without strings attached, how you checked in on people who never checked in on you, how you stayed present in lives that constantly pushed you to the background. He saw the tears you cried after loving people who were emotionally unavailable, distant or dismissive. He saw the moments you questioned yourself. Why do I keep giving so much and receiving so little? The answer: because you were reflecting God. Chosen one, the love you gave was not wasted. It was witnessed. Heaven recorded it all. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every time you sat with someone in their pain while yours was quietly tearing you apart. You thought no one noticed. You thought it didn't matter. But God saw, and it mattered more than you know. You didn't stop loving just because you weren't loved the same way in return. You didn't allow unkind people to turn you into one of them. You didn't shut your heart down or let your love grow cold. And that makes you rare. In a world full of bitterness and brokenness, it means your heart is still fertile ground for miracles. And now, the love you gave in faith is coming back to you, not from the same people, but from heaven's chosen replacements. God is surrounding you with love that is rooted in respect, loyalty, honor, and truth. Love that nourishes instead of drains. Love that covers you the way you've covered others. Don't be surprised when new people begin to enter your life. People who see you clearly, value you deeply, and love you without conditions. This is heaven's way of restoring what your heart gave freely. Not only will your cup be refilled, but it will overflow into new relationships, divine connections, and soul-aligned community. Because when God rewards love, He doesn't just give it back equally, He gives it back abundantly. You loved without applause. You forgave without closure. You gave without expecting anything in return. And now, chosen one, you're about to receive in a way that reflects the very heart of God. The world didn't return your love, but heaven always does, and this time it will be pure, intentional, and true. Chapter 5. God saw you sow. When you had almost nothing, chosen one, let's talk about sacrifice. Not the kind people do when it's easy, but the kind you made when it cost you everything. You gave when you didn't have enough for yourself. You shared when you were secretly struggling. You poured into others while praying that someone somewhere would pour into you. But even when no one did, you didn't stop. Even when your own cup was running low, you chose to be a vessel. That was faith. That was obedience. That was love in action. You sowed in silence. You gave not from surplus, but from surrender. Your offering wasn't just a financial one. It was spiritual. You sowed time into people who drained you. You sowed prayer into those who didn't pray for you. You gave your last ounce of energy to build, encourage, and serve, even when no one clapped or noticed. But God did. Heaven saw the times you chose generosity over self-preservation. You didn't withhold because of fear. You gave in faith. You didn't give to be seen. You gave to stay obedient. You weren't giving out of comfort, you were giving out of covenant. You remembered what Scripture said, "He who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows generously will also reap generously." And you believed that, even when it hurt. And now, chosen one, it's coming back, not in trickles, not in crumbs, but in abundance. Because the seed you sowed in pain has positioned you for a harvest in peace. The ground may have looked dry when you planted, but it was fertile in the spirit. You weren't sowing into people, you were sowing into purpose. Your obedience has sent a ripple into realms you can't see. Your sacrifice has set up blessings for your future, your family, your legacy. You didn't wait to have overflow, and that's exactly why heaven is trusting you with it now. You gave when it hurt, so now God is giving back in healing. You sowed while bleeding, and now you'll reap in wholeness. God has watched every silent transaction, every time you gave without being asked, every time you offered help, prayer, or encouragement when you were the one who could have used it most. That kind of heart is rare. That kind of giving moves heaven. That kind of faith releases divine multiplication. So don't think for a second that it was wasted. Not one seed has gone unnoticed. Not one act of obedience will return void. What you planted in secret is about to bloom in the open. The harvest God is preparing for you will not just meet your needs, it will exceed them. It's not just provision that's coming, it's proof. Proof that God honors sacrifice, that He rewards faithfulness, that He sees everything you do for others when you think no one sees you. Chosen one, get ready. You passed the test of giving in the drought. Now you're stepping into the season of divine downpour, not because you earned it, but because you endured it. And heaven is about to respond in a way that only heaven can. Chapter 6. God saw you heal without closure. Chosen one, this part of your journey took more strength than people will ever understand. Not because it was loud, but because it was quiet. You had to grieve what never got resolved. You had to release people who never owned what they did. You had to learn how to breathe again in places that once suffocated you with questions. Why did they do that? Did I deserve it? Will they ever admit the truth? And still, you chose healing. Not because it was fair, not because it made sense, but because you refused to let brokenness define you. You refused to let someone else's silence steal your sanity. You didn't get the closure you deserved, the apology, the recognition, the clarity, but you got something greater: peace. You chose to stop rehearsing what happened and start rebuilding what was left. You stopped chasing answers and started chasing wholeness. That didn't mean it stopped hurting overnight. It didn't mean you forgot. It meant you made a decision that your freedom was more important than their acknowledgement. And that decision came from a holy place. That decision came from God's Spirit in you. Heaven saw every internal war you fought while smiling in public. Every time you rewrote the same text but never sent it. Every time you stayed silent, not because you didn't have words, but because you didn't want to fight anymore. God saw the tears you cried on the floor while saying, "Lord, help me let this go." Even when your flesh wanted to hold on, he saw how you chose his way, the narrow path of grace, forgiveness, and inner surrender. You didn't wait for them to say sorry. You didn't wait for them to make it right. You let God make you right. That is divine maturity. That is kingdom strength. You took the wounds, the betrayal, the ghosted conversations and silent exits, and you placed them at God's feet, and he began to heal you from the inside out. Now look at you. You're lighter, you're clearer, you're no longer defined by what they did or didn't do. You're defined by what God did with your brokenness. He turned it into wisdom. He turned it into purpose. He turned it into a healing testimony that others will one day need. And here's the divine truth. Healing without closure is one of heaven's highest honors, because it means you trusted God to close the chapter even when people wouldn't. It means you believed your future was worth more than your pain. And that makes you dangerous, because nothing can hold back someone who's been healed by the hand of God instead of the hands of people. Chosen one, you're not walking wounded anymore. You're walking free. You're not waiting for justice. You're carrying joy. You're not stuck in the past. You're stepping into promise. And don't be surprised if the very ones who never gave you closure start witnessing your elevation, not out of spite, but as proof. Proof that God's healing is greater than human validation. Proof that you can move on without bitterness. Proof that freedom doesn't come from people fixing it. It comes from God filling it. Chapter 7. God is about to reward you openly. Chosen one, there comes a moment in every divine journey when what was done in secret is rewarded in the open. And that moment, your moment, is here. Every prayer you whispered when no one was listening. Every act of kindness you gave without expecting anything in return. Every time you helped someone even when you were hurting. Every moment you chose obedience over applause, humility over hype, holiness over compromise. Heaven took note. And now heaven is about to respond. God has watched you labor in hidden places. You were faithful when no one was clapping. You served while unseen. You gave without recognition. You planted seeds in silence. And now those silent seasons are about to speak loudly. The harvest is here, and it's not random. It's the result of a life laid down in secret, a heart surrendered behind closed doors, and a soul that chose to honor God even when the spotlight was nowhere in sight. You thought maybe you were forgotten. You felt overlooked at times. But the truth is, you were being preserved. You weren't being denied. You were being refined. Because what God is preparing for you requires the weight of character that was forged in silence. And now what he's about to release can't be stopped, delayed, or denied. Chosen one, the season is shifting, not gradually, suddenly. Doors that were once locked are swinging open. People who once dismissed you will be witnesses to what God is doing. But this is not about proving yourself to them. This is about God proving himself through you. He is showing the world what it looks like when someone chooses obedience over shortcuts, purity over popularity, and sacrifice over self-promotion. The table God is preparing for you has your name on it. It's been reserved by righteousness. It's been guarded by angels. It's been paid for in full, not with money, but with your surrender, your tears, your yes. And when you take your seat, you'll realize it wasn't just a reward. It was a confirmation, a divine signal that everything you endured, everything you released, everything you waited for, was never in vain. This table is not about ego. It's about evidence. Evidence that God still honors those who honor him. Evidence that obedience still leads to overflow. Evidence that hidden faithfulness never goes unnoticed. So don't shrink. Don't apologize for what God is about to do in your life. Don't second-guess the blessings that are headed your way. This isn't luck. This isn't coincidence. This is covenant. God is fulfilling his word over your life, in front of those who thought your story was finished. He's not blessing you to flex. He's blessing you to fulfill the promise, to fulfill the purpose, to fulfill the prophetic word spoken over you long ago. Heaven is clapping right now, not because you were perfect, but because you were faithful. You stayed, you served, you stood, you survived, and now it's time to be seen. Get ready for favor to find you. Get ready for honor to chase you. Get ready for answers to fall into place effortlessly. Get ready for blessings to pour without striving.